welcome back to my channel. I'm Beth. Today we're doing some dehydrating of squash. I always have an overabundance of stuff that I store all winter in my garage because it's quite cold in Pennsylvania. I had 3 squashes left, so I decided now that it's getting a smidge warmer, I would get them going and put them in the dehydrator. I begin by poking holes in them, and then I microwave them to get them soft so I can cut them more easily. Here, the squash took about, I think this one took about 5 minutes. I did about 2.5, 3, and kind of flipped it over on the other side. And now it's much easier to cut and to get the seeds out of it. Once I have the seeds all out of them and they're ready to go on a baking pan, I pour a little bit of water because I almost kind of want to steam these. There is no seasoning whatsoever I put on them because I am going to be dehydrating and I don't want anything to interfere with the dehydrating process. And that way I'm going to make it into a powder and some flakes to add to my soups or stews or any kind of casserole. I even add it to pasta sometimes to add just that extra layer of flavor. I had these in the oven about 25 minutes, and now I'm going to start to get the pulp and into a bowl and separate it obviously from the skin. The acorn squash peeled really nicely. Slippery little suckers. What movie is that from? Can anyone remember? Leave it in the comments. I have all my squash in a bowl. I have pretty much here. I'm going to use an immersion blender, and what I'm going to be doing is making a puree out of it. I can't say the word puree today to save my life, but anyway, here we are. I'm also going to be adding some water to this. It sounds strange to add water to something I'm going to dehydrate, but I don't want it to turn into fruit leather because that will not grind up very well to create a powder. The water's going in. I just do little bits at a time and kind of see where I get to. You don't want to overwater it, obviously. So we're just going to keep blending and seeing what kind of consistency we get. Thank goodness all that noise is over, right? Now you can hear me probably a little bit better. If you missed anything, just ask me anything in the comments. You'll see here, this is perfect. This is a great puree. It kind of looks like baby food consistency or maybe an applesauce, but a little bit thinner than an applesauce and not gritty. You'll notice that I do have a 9-tray Excalibur dehydrator, but I have not purchased, because this has always worked fine for me, the trays that hold liquids. I just use my Nesco round trays that I used to use for in there when I had more thinner liquidy items. So you know what, save a couple bucks if you can. This works perfectly fine. I will fill the trays in a thin layer. Don't get them too thick because then it takes forever to dehydrate. And sometimes the thinner areas dry a little bit quicker than a thicker area. So I do try to make it a little bit more even. If you look like I'm icing a cake, it's almost therapeutic though putting this stuff on here. I feel like I like the just spreading it thinly and getting in my zen. But that's basically what we're doing here. What I do is I take my round Nesco fruit leather trays and I just put them on my trays that I put in my Excalibur. Here we are. We're going to dehydrate this at 125, and this process took about 5 to 6 hours. Here is about 3 hours in. It's almost done, but some of my higher spots, as I mentioned earlier, did need a little bit more drying time. Now I'm getting it off my tray, and you can see that it's very dried and flaky. Now I'm going to be putting in some off of this first tray into a coffee grinder just to show you how you can make it into a powder. I am not going to make all of this into a powder because I like to have just some flakes, because you know what, if you're just throwing it in a soup, it doesn't need to be a powder. You can just throw in pieces and it'll, you know, rehydrate within the soup very easily. You know, why go through all the work of powdering it up? But I do like powders when I'm putting it in pasta. Here we are, grinding it up. I do pulse it sometimes, and you have to wait a second so not too much of the powder comes blowing up after you grind it. You have like a little big powder bomb going off. You did even see me waiting a minute that it ended up having a smidge of powder coming up out of the coffee grinder. Now I'm putting it in a mason jar for storage. I'm not going to end up with a whole jar here. I should have probably picked out a smaller one, but you know, live and learn. That was one of the first ones I saw of the smaller sizes and didn't feel like digging for my really little tiny ones. Here I am dusting out the stuff that's kind of sticking in my grinder. It looks like I'm dusting for fingerprints, doesn't it? Or like some kind of dinosaur bone. Very carefully trying to, you know, dust that I don't lose any of it. That's where I'm at with this. Here we are. Here's the flakes. I'm just going to leave these like that. They kind of look like fish food, don't they? I always say when they're in a jar, it's kind of like little fish flakes. I don't have fish anymore, but when I did, that's what the fish flakes look like. Much smaller, obviously. And then I ground up about, I think it ended up to be about 2 ounces maybe, which takes a lot more than you think to get ground up to that. So that's the result of, you know, 2 acorn squash and 1 butternut. Doesn't look like much, but you know what? I can just get some more when they're on sale again and add to this. I'm going to keep a watch on this for, you know, the drying and conditioning for the next week. But then that's it. It's ready to go. Beautiful. I love the color. And it's good. Thank you for joining me. See you next time.